Hello everyone, welcome to this session. We have discussed two lectures or three lectures and two chapters of this ancient past. That is the part of our ancient history, medieval history, and art and culture. And we will be discussing the new chapter, that is nature of sources and historical construction, and this is very interesting chapter. So if you have prepared your basic understanding from NCERT books, then you will need to jump your advanced level, and you need to listen this uh, standard book that is very important for prelims perspective as well as mains point of view. So let's start without delay. Nature of sources and historical construction. We will having known the nature of sources. What are the various sources to reconstruct history or to write history, and what is historical construction about the Indian history. So generally we will discuss history part, that is what is history and how many types of history we have learned. History is divided into three parts. First is prehistory, and second is proto-history. Third is the history. So in prehistory there is no written record available, and we don't know the history was actual or not. But proto-history have written record. Proto-history has a written record, but we don't decipher them. We don't be able to know how the past or Indus Valley people, Harappan people wrote. And simply history, all types of text, all written records, all means key written records available, and we can simply decipher them quickly, as we know the language, we know the script. Okay, so these three types we can divide the historical past. Material remains. The methods of archaeology help us to recover the material remains of the past relating to ancient, medieval, and modern periods of our history. In India and many other countries, archaeology is used to study prehistory and ancient history. With the help of archaeology, we can learn, we can study prehistory and ancient history. And why not modern history? Because modern history has very advanced level history, that we know our past 2 to 300 years back. Prehistory is concerned with the period for which there are no written sources, and history is basically based on written material. And between the transition between these two history, that is prehistory, and history, that is proto-history. Proto-history is that we don't know their language, what they wrote, but we have written record available during this period of time. For example, the Harappan people had written more number of text, but we don't know what they wrote. Okay, and prehistoric sites differ from historical sites in several respects. Generally, they are not in the form of prominent habitation remains, but principally of fossils of humans, plants, and animals. They used as tools or as different types of protection tools that were made from humans bones, plants, and animal bones. Okay, generally animal bones. They are found on the hill slopes of plateaus and mountains, and on the banks of nearby rivers with terraces, and comprise sundry fauna and flora. Why these things are available generally in nearby plateaus and mountains? Because ancient people lived nearby mountains and plateau to protect themselves from any from hunters, as well as from rainfall or a thunderstorm. So they lived in caves, or if they produce the crop grains, then they lived in the banks of the rivers. More importantly, numerous stone tools from the Stone Age have been found at these sites. The remains of tools, plants, animals, and humans from the pre-ice age indicate the climatic conditions that prevailed at the time. Although the written the writing was known in India by the middle of the 3rd millennium BC in the Indus culture, Indus Valley civilization, that is written records available there, but we don't decipher them. Okay, I it has not so far been deciphered. Thus, though the Harappans knew how to write, their culture is placed in the proto-historic phase. The same is the case with the Chalcolithic or Copper Stone Age cultures, which had no writing, and generally this period defined as prehistory, because no written records are available during this period. Decipherable writing was known in India only in the 3rd century BC, with the Ashokan inscriptions providing solid evidence for historical reconstruction from the time. So, deciphering text started from Mauryan period, and we generally know about the Rigvedic period, because four Rigvedas were written in Sanskrit language. So we are able to decipher them, or we are able to understand how they were written in the Sanskrit language. However, despite the critical use of Vedic and post-Vedic literary sources for history in pre-Ashokan times, archaeology remains a very important source for historians. The ancient Indians left innumerable material remains, such as bone tools, their production, hunting, gathering, and foraging, or etc. etc. The stone temples in South India and the brick monasteries in Eastern India. So you have to learn about the stone temples, because stone temples not found every part of India, but these stone temples are found mainly in South India and brick monasteries in Eastern India. UPSC generally asks about the question and their features. Question related to temples in various parts of India, and also asked in the past that the rock cut architecture, first rock cut architecture is located where, or which temple is built with the help of brick, stone, or brick, stone, or stone tools. Yes, stone, brick, stone or brick materials. Okay. Eastern India still stand to remind us of the great building activities of the past. However, the major part of these remains lies buried in mounds scattered all over India. Buried in mounds. UPSC asked a question, I think 2023, that is, the ancient mound started during which period? So it was Indus Valley or Rigvedic, or it was started from Buddhist monasteries or Buddhism, which is including in the what stupa. So this was a wrong statement, but mounds were started since Indus Valley civilization. Okay, a mound is an elevated portion of land covering the remains of old habitations. It may be of different types: single culture, major culture, and multiculture. Single culture mounds represent only one culture throughout, means people follow only one culture, that is called as single culture mound. Some mounds represent only the painted grey ware culture, others Satvahana culture, and yet others that of Kushan culture. In major culture mounds, one culture is dominant and the others are of secondary importance. And multicultural mounds represent several important cultures in succession, which occasionally overlap with one another. So, we can say the culture is dominant and others are secondary important. So, this is diffusion. And multicultural generally know about the term known as enculturation, that is, each and every culture's values and norms is taken from taken to from one another. If one culture's values is very good, then it should be adopt another culture, so interlinking to each other, and they also show the transfer of values and norms of other cultures to one culture. Okay, as in the case with the Ramayana and Mahabharata, an excavated mound can be used to understand successive layers of the material and other aspects of a culture. Okay, so Ramayana and Mahabharata are two excavated mounds. Okay, a mound can be excavated vertically or horizontally. So excavation can be vertically and horizontally. Vertical excavation means lengthwise digging to uncover the period-wise sequence of culture. Means first period was what? Indus Valley. Then second is Rig Vedic period, later Vedic period, and after that the Buddhism and Jainism, two religions, were born. And then Mauryan period, then Sungas, Kanwas, okay, Sungas, Kanwas, and then Indo-Greek or another Scythian Kushan period, and then Gupta period, Harsa period, and this then Delhi Sultanate, Mughal Empire, Vijayanagar, including Vijayanagar Empire, and the last one is the British Empire. Okay. And what is horizontal excavation? Horizontal excavation entails digging the mound as a whole or a major part of it. The method may enable the excavation to obtain a complete idea of the site culture in a particular period, such as in Kiladi in Tamil Nadu. Recently, recently was digging and more number of excavated materials were found, but government of India and state of Tamil Nadu tussle between them banned this excavation. So we don't know much more uh, excavated materials which are did excavation on this site Kiladi, and we broadly know about the excavation material from Indus Valley civilization. So Indus Valley civilization's materials are very broad that were known by us in this period. As most sites have been dug vertically, they provide a good chronological sequence of material culture and excavation. Like the archaeologists mostly use the vertical excavation method because vertical excavation method tells about the chronology of history. Horizontal diggings being very expensive, okay, because each and every part of the civilization cannot be possible to study each and every things, so it could be very expensive. So horizontal diggings being very expensive are very few in number, with the result that the excavations do not give us a full or even adequate picture of material life in many phases of ancient Indian history. Even in those mounds which have been excavated, the ancient remains have been preserved in varying proportions. In the dry arid climate of western UP, Rajasthan and northwestern India, antiquities are found in a better state of preservation. But in the moist and humid climate of the mid-Gangetic plains and in the deltaic regions, even iron implements suffered corrosion and mud structures become difficult to detect. So excavation generally is successful in those areas which is dry in condition, and because the in the dry condition excavation could be a excavation can be a good can be done with ease, but in moist or rainfall or coastal area, we can say the excavation might be difficult because of materials could be corrosion lead, and the excavated materials we cannot be able to generally study about much uh, from them. Antiquities are found in a better state of preservation, okay, but in the moist and humid climate of the mid-Gangetic plains and in the deltaic regions, even iron implements suffered corrosion and mud structures become difficult to detect. Only the burnt bricks structures or stone structures of the Gangetic plains are well preserved. So the materials which are made up of iron, then it could be hardly be studied about these materials. But if these materials are made up of made from uh, brick or stone, then we could be able to study properly about these materials, their time period, their past, and how they were used by the people in their daily life or in their culture. Excavations have brought to light the villages that people established around 6000 BC in Balochistan. So during 6000 BC, Balochistan, the part of Pakistan, here for the first time rice or no, we don't know. Rice cultivation was developed in the UP, that is Sarai Nahar rice site, but in Balochistan it is the first site that where the village was created. Okay, they also tell us about the material culture which was developed in the Gangetic plains in the second millennium BC. They show the layout of the settlements in which people lived, the types of pottery they used, the form of house in which they dwelt, the kind of cereals they ate, and the type of tools and implements they used. So, multiple number of materials which have been very deciphered by archaeologists, such as where people lived, they used what types of pottery they used, and what types of houses they lived, and various crops production which they ate, and types of tools and implements they used to hunting or the crop production or plowshare. Okay, some people in South India buried in graves. Burial mounds, first of all, found in this Burj home that is located in this area. Along with the dead, their tools, weapons, pottery, and other belongings, and these were encircled by large pieces of stone, such as in South India, megalith. The different types of megaliths used in South India for the put around the grave. Okay, these structures are called megalith. Okay, the text is deciphering it. That is, text is also telling us that these structures are called as megaliths. Although some megaliths do not fall in this category, by digging them, we learn of the life people lived in the Deccan from the Iron Age onwards. So, during 6000 BC, early 6000 BC, burial mounds found in Burj home site. But if we consider the stone tools which have been putting around the graveyard, then we can say these materials, these structures, we should say these are megaliths. Okay, which started from Iron Age. The culture was started from Iron Age, not since 6000 BC. This is around 15 to 1100 1200 BC, and afterwards the science that enables us to systematically dig the successive layers of old mounds and to form an idea of the material life of the people is called archaeology. Archaeology is a study of material remains which are excavated, which are unearthed. Their dates are fixed by various types of methods, that is radiocarbon dating is the most important. Radiocarbon or carbon 14 is a radioactive carbon that is studied with the help of isotope. Okay, carbon 14 isotope means the neutron is no matching with proton, but proton, the carbon 14 is matching with proton but not considered as neutron, as neutron could be 1 or 0 but proton only. If one carbon has one proton, then another must be 1, so it is isotope. Radiocarbon which is present in all living objects. Okay, carbon is found in every living being. It decays like all radioactive substances at a uniform rate. When an object is living, the process of decay of carbon 14 is neutralized by absorption of carbon 14 through air and food. However, when an object ceases to be alive, when an object ceases to be alive, or if they dead, its carbon 14 content continues to decay at a uniform rate but ceases to absorb carbon 14 from air and food. Okay, by measuring the loss of carbon 14 content in an ancient object, its age can be determined. So with the help of carbon 14 we can know about the material's age or age of the material that we can generally study about the age of material. This is because, as stated earlier, the decay of carbon 14 takes place at a uniform rate. It is known that the half-life of carbon 14 is 5568 years. The half-life of a radioactive material is defined as this is the maximum, okay, not minimum, this is the maximum that carbon 14 can study this up to this year for any living being, as the period during which half the radioactive content in an object disappears. After 5568 years, the remains of materials cannot be deciphered how they are old. Thus, the carbon 14 content in an object that ceased to live 5568 years ago would be half of what it was when it was living, and in an object which ceased to live 11,136 years ago. So between these two deadline, if we consider carbon 14 content, the object ceased to live 5568 years, and 5568 years ago, then we can say this is half of what it was when it was living. And in an object which ceased to live 11,136 years ago, its carbon 14 content would be 1/4 of that it had been when it was living. So 1/2, 1/4. So this could be, we can say, the geometric progression, GP, and it is your job for the finding how you can find the ratio. What means ratio? Common ratio of GP from this, that is 1/2, 1 by 4, 1 by 8. So this is the sad part. So what is the common ratio of this? Common ratio is 1 by 2. So each and every study of carbon 14 go with the half life of every living being. Okay, but no antiquity older than 70,000 years. Okay, so 70,000 years is only the deadline that no living beings can be studied to tell about her date, that how old they are. The history of climate and vegetation is known through an examination of plant residues and especially through pollen analysis, like lakhs old material cannot be deciphered through carbon 14. We must take an examination to study the life of ancient period, like geological period, that we cannot be able to decipher them, we cannot be able to study them through with the help of carbon 14. So the history of climate and vegetation is known through an examination of plant residues and especially through the pollen analysis. On this basis, it is suggested that agriculture was practiced in Rajasthan and Kashmir around 7000 to 600 BC. The nature and components of metal artifacts are analyzed scientifically, and consequently, the mines from which the metals were obtained are located, and the stages in the development of metal technology identified. An examination of animal bones shows whether the animals were domesticated and also indicates the uses to which they were put. So we generally understand about our ancient materials or living beings or non-living beings we can find with the help of carbon 14. I may add that archaeology provides a kind of soil archive which contains various material remains. However, for a total study of prehistory extending roughly up to 3000 BC or so or after, it is necessary to get an idea of the history of the soil, rocks, etc. This is provided by geological studies. Similarly, the world of plants and animals keeps on changing, though at a slow pace. Their history is provided by biological studies. Human history cannot be understood without an idea of the continuing interaction between soils, plants, animals on the one hand, and humans on the other. Geological and biological advances enable us to understand not only prehistory but also history. Taken together with archaeological remains, geological and biological studies act as important sources for the study of over 98% of the total time scale of history, starting with the origin of the earth. So this is very important and very easy, and we will having to discuss the coins. The study of coin is what? Study of coin means numismatics. You should remember this. Okay. Although a large number of coins and inscriptions have been found on the surface, many of them have been unearthed by digging, because many of coins were minted by various kings, various emperors, and they earthed when they when the rulers were defeated as well as rulers were ended in the long period of time. So coins are generally digging in modern day that we can decipher them, and we can study the coins to find out their period, their time period. Okay, which coins were minted by which ruler or which king. The study of coins is called numismatics. Ancient Indian currency was not issued in the form of paper, as is the case nowadays, but as metal coins, because it was uh, not possible to issue the currency in the form of paper, because the paper was discovered by Chinese scientists, by Chinese uh, citizens, and after that the Chinese currency was issued in paper. Then other parts of the world also developed the paper currency, but yet Indian kings did not be able to issue their currency in the form of paper. Ancient coins were made of metal such as copper, silver, gold, and lead. Coin molds made of burnt clay have been discovered in large numbers. Most of them relate to the Kushan period, because gold coins were largely minted by Kushan rulers, and after that Gupta period. Gupta rulers minted largest number of gold coins. Largest number of coins were minted by Kushan rulers, but gold coins Gupta rulers. Okay, remember this. The first three Christian centuries. The use of such molds in the post-Gupta period virtually disappeared, as there was nothing like the modern banking system in ancient times. People stored money in earthenware and also in brass vessels and maintained them as precious hoards on which they could fall back in time of need. So you also used in your adolescent or child time, then you generally used the Hindi name is gullak, and they put your money to collect all these coins and paper, and when needed this, you used them frequently. Okay, without any hesitation, without embarrassing, you use these money when uh, these money could be used. Okay, needed. Many of these vaults containing not only Indian coins but also those minted abroad, such as in the Roman Empire, have been discovered in different parts of India. Roman coins generally found mainly in South India, because in South India the merchant guilds trade with the Roman merchant guilds. They are preserved mostly in museums in Kolkata, Patna, Lucknow, Delhi, Jaipur, Mumbai, and Chennai. There are many Indian coins in the museums of Nepal, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. As Britain ruled over India for a long time, around 300 years, British officials succeeded in transferring many of the Indian coins to private and public collections in Britain. So, London Museum has most number of coins that you can find or you can see if you go to London in the future. Coins of the major dynasties have been catalogued and published. We have catalogues of the coins in the Indian Museum at Kolkata, of Indian coins in the British Museum in London, and so on. Nonetheless, there are a large number of coins that have yet to be catalogued and published. So we don't know which museum has a large number of coins that put there. Our earliest coins contain a few symbols, but the later coins depict the figures of kings and divinities and also mention their names and dates. So earlier, like punch marked coins, they don't show anything on it because in early time people used these punch marked coins only for the trading purpose, only for the exchange purpose, but they don't use as large as them to trade or the sale and purchase of goods has become a commodity with the trading system, and they cannot be they generally not used these punch marked coins for their trading purpose. The areas where they are found indicate the region of their circulation. This has enabled us to reconstruct the history of several ruling dynasties, especially of the Indo-Greeks who came to India from North Afghanistan and ruled here in the 2nd and 1st centuries BC. So after punch-marked coins, cast die stuck coins were minted by various rulers, and they also mentioned their names, their dates, and the figure out of himself, as well as along with the divine who patronized the deities. As coins were used for various purposes such as donations, a mode of payment, and a medium of exchange. So we generally know the currency or coin is the medium of exchange for goods and services. We use often currency or coin. They throw considerable light on economic history. Some coins were issued by guilds of merchants and goldsmiths with the permission of the rulers. So without permission of the rulers, or we can say in a modern day, without RBI's or sign of the governor of RBI, we cannot use them, and they generally they are considered as black money or the temporary money. Okay, and they cannot be used in the market to buy goods and services. This shows that crafts and commerce had become important. Coins helped transactions on a large scale and contributed to trade. The largest number of Indian coins date to the post-Mauryan period, because during Mauryan period the punch-marked coins were minted, but after Indo-Greek came in India and they frequently used cast die stuck that were minted by rulers, name their gods, their dates, and their ruling class and caste. These were made of lead, platinum, copper, bronze, silver, and gold. The Guptas issued the largest number of gold coins, and the Kushan issued largest number of coins. So keep alive this difference between these two rulers, that is Kushanas minted large number of coins, either they were silver, they were gold, or they were also made of lead, protein, copper or bronze. Okay, but Gupta rulers, for example Chandragupta Vikramaditya or Chandragupta II, minted largest number of gold coins. Okay, so keep difference between these two types of coins. All this indicates that trade and commerce flourished, especially in post-Mauryan and a good part of the Gupta period. So many of the merchant guilds used these coins to trade easily or to buy goods and sell another place. However, only a few coins belonging to the post-Gupta period have been found, which indicates a decline of trade and commerce in that period. So we generally consider this period as feudal system and the decay system or deurbanization. Coins also portray kings and gods and contain religious symbols and legends, all of which throw light on the art and religion of the time. For example, we will look the Sultanate period's coins that Muhammad of Ghori used the symbol of his divinity, symbol of the goddess Lakshmi and himself in the coins who minted by him. Cowries were also used as coins. Cowries were first of all, when we know our history, coins were used as cowries. Though their purchasing power was low as compared to the coins were made up of copper, bronze, protein, silver as well as gold. They appear in substantial numbers in post-Gupta times but may have been used earlier. Okay. Next, inscriptions. Why inscriptions? Read because many number of kings such as Ashoka described his kingdom, his empires, values, norms and his dhamma in the inscriptions. And inscriptions, that is study of inscription, is known as what? Epigraphy. Okay, so you should remember this. Far more important than coins. Okay, inscriptions are more important than coins in the field of know about the history, know about our past. So inscriptions are generally very important as compared to coins because inscriptions has so more number of information because they are not as short as coins. Their study is called epigraphy. First of all coins, then epigraphy we are learning on the way. And the study of the old writing used in inscriptions and other old records in is called paleography. So old inscriptions, if we writing used in inscriptions, the study of old writing used in inscriptions and old records, that is called as paleo means old, graphy means the which is written in the inscription. Okay, so old inscriptions If we study old inscriptions with the help of any record, that study is known as paleography. Inscriptions were carved on seals, stone pillars, rocks, copper plates, temple walls, wooden tablets, and bricks or images. In India as a whole, the earliest inscriptions were recorded on stone. Okay, so you generally heard about Asokan pillar rock edict. So major rock edict and pillar edict, minor rock edict, these are three types of pillar edict that Asoka built there at the different parts of the country, different parts of the subcontinent, and his empire was very too much large, generally in mainly in northwest India. There is that was part of the Pakistan, Afghanistan, and some part of Persia or Iran. However, in the early centuries of the Christian era, copper plate began to be used for this purpose. Even then, the practice of engraving inscriptions on stone continued on a large scale in South India, because in South India we often found various types of temples which were built with the help of rock. So rock cut architecture generally found in South India as compared to North India, because North India generally made from bricks. We have also in that region a large number of inscriptions recorded on the walls of temples to serve as permanent records. Like coins, inscriptions are preserved in various museums of the country, but the largest number may be found in the office of the chief epigraphist at Mysore. So Mysore has preserved large number of inscriptions, because inscriptions are also found in large number in South India. So government decided to put these inscriptions at Mysore, because the preservation of these inscriptions would be more important to decipher our past, to know about our past, not decipher but know our past history. The earliest inscriptions were written in Prakrit. Prakrit were used during the time of Buddha in the 3rd century BC, or the Prakrit language, Pali language was used by Buddha, and Prakrit language was used by Mauryan period. Sanskrit was adopted as an epigraphic medium in the 2nd century AD, and its use became widespread in the 4th and 5th centuries CE. But even then, Prakrit continued to be used. Inscriptions began to be composed in regional languages in the 9th and 10th centuries. Most inscriptions bearing on the history of the Maurya, post-Maurya, and Gupta periods have been published in a series of collections called Corpus Inscriptionum Indicarum, but not many inscriptions of the post-Gupta period figure in such systematic compilations. In the case of South India, topographical list of inscriptions have been published. Still, over 50,000 inscriptions, mostly of South India, await publication. Generally, we cannot know about them. We need to understand their theory, that we could be able to unearth our ancient past in the more scientific way if these inscriptions are studied in very cordially. Okay, the Harappan inscriptions which await decipherment seem to have been written in a pictographic script in which ideas and objects were expressed in the form of pictures. They did not write in the text, but they depicted in pictographic script that are not understood by us properly. We generally know their pictographic script instead of their writing, because during proto history we generally do not be able to understand, do not be able to decipher their text or their writing. But we can decipher, we can manage, or we can study the pictographic material which are available uh, in the excavation during the period of Harappan civilization. Most Ashokan inscriptions were engraved in the Brahmi script, which were written from left to right. Okay, but some were also incised in the Kharoshthi script. So Brahmi script mainly used during Mauryan period, and the inscriptions were found in the area of North India as well as South India. But when it comes to Kharoshthi script, we found these script in the inscriptions which are mostly located in northwest India, such as Afghanistan, which was written from right to left. Okay, Brahmi script written from left to right, and Kharoshthi script from right to left, as both are used by Harappan in their script. However, the Brahmi script prevailed virtually all over India except for the northwestern part, because in the northwestern part Ashokan period Ashokan period scholars used the Kharoshthi script to write northwestern inscriptions. Greek and Aramaic scripts were employed in writing Ashokan inscriptions in Pakistan and Afghanistan. But Brahmi continues to be the main script till the end of Gupta times. An epigraphist can decipher most Indian inscriptions up to about the 7th century if he has mastered Brahmi and its variations. But subsequently we notice strong regional variations in this script. Inscriptions found on the seals of Harappa belonging to about 2500 BC, and more number of seals are found in sites of Harappan sites, and we generally consider them as they are showing which we know about much more. We know about them as much more information with the help of our archaeological remains, are considered symbolic by some scholars. For Indian history, the earliest deciphered inscriptions are Iranian. The earliest deciphered inscriptions are Iranian. So you should remember this. They belong to the 6th to 5th centuries BC and are found in Iran, because we compare Iranian pillar edict to Ashokan pillar edict, and most sophisticated pillar is Iranian edict. They appear in Old Indo-Iranian, and also an Iranian pillar. In a Iranian pillar, not we can say that this is advanced, but we can say Iranian pillar is the not monolith, but this was made as multilithic rocks. But if we consider the Ashokan pillar, it was made monolithic or made with the help of single rock. Okay, the Iranian inscriptions appear in Old Indo-Iranian and also in Semitic languages in the cuneiform script. They speak of the Iranian conquest of the Hindu or Sindhu area. Of course, in India, the earliest deciphered are Ashokan inscriptions. They are generally written in Brahmi script and Prakrit language in the 3rd century BC. They throw light on Mauryan history and Ashoka's achievements. In the 14th century AD, two Ashokan pillar inscriptions were found by Firoz Shah Tughlaq, one in Meerut and another place in Topara, Haryana. So remember these two pillars which were found during Sultanate period or found by Firoz Shah Tughlaq, and they also replaced these two places, and he got replaced these two inscriptions from their site to establish another place. He brought them to Delhi and asked the Pandits of his empire to decipher the inscriptions, but they failed to do so. Okay, the same difficulty was faced by the British when in the last quarter of the 10th century by discovered Ashokan inscriptions. But one talented scholar, these epigraphs were first deciphered in 1837 by James Prinsep, because James Prinsep was very civil servant in the employ of the East India Company in Bengal. He deciphered them properly. We have various types of inscriptions. Some convey royal orders and decisions regarding social, religious, and administrative matters to officials and the people in general. Ashokan inscriptions belong to this category. Others are votive records of the followers of Buddhism, Jainism, Vaishnavism, Saivism, and the like. They appear on pillars, tablets, temples, or images as marks of devotion. Anything else could be happened, as inscriptions could be written in any part of the material, such as in trees, in temple walls, in house walls, or any other parts, any other metals which can be used for them. Yet other types eulogize the attributes and achievements of kings and conquerors and ignore their defeats or weaknesses, because kings do not mention themselves as defeated king. Okay, so the defeat and weaknesses of the king cannot be found in any inscriptions, which are mainly so the king which was uh, built during this empire, during this period of time. Okay, and to this category belongs the Allahabad pillar inscription of Samudragupta. Finally, we have many donative records which refer especially to gifts of money, cattle, land, etc., mainly for religious purposes, and made not only by the king and princess but also by artisans and merchants. So these can be gifted to Brahmin as and other weaker section of the society that could be live their life with very good manner. Inscriptions recording land grants made mainly by chiefs and princes are very important for the study of the land system and administration in ancient India. These were mostly engraved on copper plates. So copper plate inscriptions are more generally found more in numbers. They record grants of lands, revenues, and villages made to monks, priests, temples, monasteries, vassals, and officials. They were written in all languages including Prakrit, Sanskrit, Tamil and Telugu. During the period of these three, such as Tamil, Telugu, these two languages used for inscriptions during the period of which period? Sangam period. We will know about this important period and their polity, social, economic and technological point of view, and the situation of women, children as weaker section during this Sangam period. Okay, next is literary sources. Literary sources generally know about the study of sources which are written by human themselves. It is known as manuscript. Although the ancient Indians knew how to write as early as 2500 BC, our most ancient manuscripts are not older than the AD 4th century and are found in Central Asia. So, first literary sources was found in Central Asia. India, they were written on birch bark and palm leaves, but in Central Asia, where the Prakrit language had spread from India, manuscripts were also written on sheep, leather, and wooden tablets. So, Indian used birch bark and palm leaves, but Central Asian tribes used sheep leather and wood tablet to write these inscriptions, to write these sources. About that time, these writings are called inscriptions. Okay, but they are as good as manuscripts. When printing was not known, manuscripts were very highly valued. Although old Sanskrit manuscripts are found all over India, they mostly relate to South India, Kashmir, and Nepal. Currently, inscriptions are largely preserved in museums and manuscripts in libraries. So, inscriptions preserved in museums and manuscripts in libraries. More number of libraries available in established in country and also establishing right now as well. Most ancient books contain religious themes. Hindu religious literature includes Vedas, Ramayana and Mahabharata, the Puranas and the like. They throw considerable light on the social and cultural conditions of ancient times, but it is difficult to use them in the context of time and place. The Rig Veda may be assigned to circa 1500 to 1000 BC, as we generally consider this period as a Rig Vedic period. And after that, the later Vedic period was 1000 BCE to 6000 1000 BCE to 600 or 500 BCE. Though such collections as the Atharvaved, Yajurved and Brahmanas, Aranyakas and Upanishads date roughly to 100 to 500 BC, because during this period, during early period, during or we can say Rig Vedic period, one book was written, that is Rig Veda, and after that there are multiple books were written, such as three Vedas, Atharvaved, Yajurved and Samved, Yajurved and Atharvaved, and also Upanishad, Brahmanas, Aranyakas. These were also written during this period. Almost every Vedic text contains interpolations which generally appear at the beginning or the end and seldom in the middle. The Rig Veda mainly comprises prayers, whereas the later Vedic text comprise prayers as well as rituals, magic and mythological stories. However, the Upanishads contain philosophical speculations. In order to understand the Vedic text, it was necessary to study the Vedangas or the limbs of the Veda. Okay. These supplements of the Veda comprised phonetics. So you should remember this for men's point of view. So these supplements of the Veda comprised, which include by Rig Veda, which include in Rig Veda, that is phonetics, means shiksha, ritual, kalp, grammar, vyakaran and etymology, nirukta, and one more term is metrics, that is chand, okay, and astronomy, jyotish, and much literature grew around each of these subjects. They were written in the form of precepts in prose. A precept was called a sutra. Various sutra, or you can say various formulas used to write these texts. And also we know about the various types of formulas used in various subjects like science, maths, etc. The most famous example of this writing is the grammar of Panini, that is Ashtadhyi, written around 450 BCE. While illustrating the rules of grammar, Panini cast invaluable light on the society, economy, and culture. So these terms are mainly used by Panini in his book, that is Ashtadhyi. The two epics and the major Puranas seem to have been finally compiled by circa AD 400. Of the epics, the Mahabharata attributed to Vyas is older and possibly reflects the state of affairs from the 10th century BCE to AD 4th century. Various scholars termed this Mahabharata epic as the Vyas was not merely a writer of Mahabharata. The largest number of slok and chanda are included in Mahabharata. It was not possible. It is unable to say that Vyas attributed all these slok and chandas to write Mahabharata, but we generally know various period was various periods saw this development because of large number of sloka and chanda are included in this epic. So very number of period is uh, the largest number of large number of time included in this period to make this epic. Originally it consisted of 8800 verses and was called Jaya, or a collection dealing with victory. These were increased to 24,000 and came to be known as Bharata because it contains the stories of the descendants of one of the earliest Vedic tribes called Bharata. The final compilation increased the verses to 1 lakh, which came to be known as the Mahabharata. So sometime Mahabharata was in a small chunk of some pages, which during it was being started to write by written by scholars, written by author, or the Sat Sahasri Samhita. Mahabharata was also known as Sat Sahasri Samhita because it was too much large as compared to other text. It contains narrative, descriptive, and didactic material. So these three terms are very important for mains perspective. You should remember this. The main narrative which relates to the Kaurav Pandav conflict. So narrative means the telling stories, because on the spot people do not see any drama which is what is happening at that time. Descriptive means what? Descriptive means proper defining period, and that define scholars uh, should be able to define in a very broad manner. Didactic material means the materials found on the spot that various scholars as well as archaeologists found these materials to study about the remains of the period. Okay, so the main narrative which relates to the Kaurav Pandav conflict may relate to the later Vedic period. The descriptive portion might be a post-Vedic period. So Vedic, later Vedic period, during that time, post-Vedic period for descriptive, and the didactic portion generally relates to the post-Maurya and Gupta period. So these are the chronology for narrative, descriptive and didactic period, didactic portion of this Mahabharata, this epic Mahabharata. Similarly, the Ramayana of Valmiki originally consisted of 6,000 verses, which were raised to 12,000 and eventually to 24,000 verses. Although this epic appears to be more unified than the Mahabharata, it too has its didactic parts which were subsequently added. The Ramayana composition started in the 5th century BC. After that, it passed through as many as 5 stages, and the 5th stage seems to have been as late as the 12th century AD. As a whole, the text seems to have been composed later than the Mahabharata. In the post-Vedic period, we have a large corpus of ritual literature. Grand public sacrifices to be made by princes and men of substance belonging to the three higher varnas are set out in the Shrauta Sutras, which provide for several ostentatious, sorry for wrong pronunciation, royal coronation ceremonies, whichever is pronounced as you can pronounce yourself. Okay, similarly, domestic rituals connected with birth, naming, sacred thread, investiture, marriage, funerals, etc. are prescribed in the Griha Sutra. So Saura Sutra and Griha Sutra. Saura Sutra generally consider the three varnas, okay, higher varnas like Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Sudra. But Griha Sutra generally consider, generally include, okay, like rituals or domestic rituals such as birth, naming, sacred thread initiative, investiture, marriage, funerals, etc. Okay, both are Saura Sutra and Griha Sutras relate to 600 to 300 BC. Mention may also be made of the Sulva Sutra. So third one is Sulva Sutra, which prescribe various kinds of measurements for the construction of sacrificial altars. So Saura Sutra includes domestic rituals, coronation ceremonies, royal ceremonies, and Griha Sutra for domestic rituals, and Sulva Sutra generally consider about the sacrificial altar, construction of sacrificial altars, various kinds of measurements which Sulva Sutra includes. Okay, the religious books of Jainas and the Buddhists refer to historical persons and incidents. The earliest Buddhist texts were written in Pali, which were spoken in Magad or South Bihar, and was basically a form of Prakrit. They were finally compiled in the 1st century BC in Sri Lanka, but the canonical portions reflect the state of affairs in India in the age of the Buddha. They tell us not only about the life of the Buddha but also about some of his royal contemporaries who ruled over Magad, North Bihar, and eastern UP. The most important and interesting portion of the non canonical literature is provided by the stories of the previous birth of the Gautam Buddha. And Gautam Buddha's story generally written in Pali language and consider much broadly about his past life in uh, Jatak Katha, known as Jatak Katha, and Tripitaka like Vinay Pitak, Sut Pitak, and Abhidhamma Pitak. These are three which considered as the epics during the time of Buddha, which includes the various time periods of Buddha and after his life. It was believed that before he was actually born as Gautama, the Buddha passed through over 550 births, in many cases in the form of animals. Each birth story is called a Jatak, which is a folk tale. The Jatakas throw invaluable light on the social and economic conditions of the period between the 5th and 2nd century BC. They also make incidental references to political events in the age of the Buddha. The Jaina texts were written in Prakrit and were eventually compiled in AD 6th century in Vallabhi in Gujarat. So Jain texts were mainly found in Vallabhi, that is located in Gujarat during the period of 6th century, and they were written in the Prakrit language. They, however, contain many passages that help us to reconstruct the political history of eastern UP and Bihar in the age of Mahavira. The Jaina texts refer repeatedly to trade and traders. We also have a large body of secular literature. To this class belong to law books called the Dharma Sutras and Smritis, which together with their commentaries are called Dharma Shastras. The Dharma Shastras were compiled in 500 to 200 BC, and the principal Smritis were codified in the first 6th century of the Christian era. Okay, they prescribe the duties to be performed by the different varnas as well as by kings and their officials. They set out the rules for marriage together with the laws according to which property is to be held, sold, and inherited. They also prescribe punishments for persons guilty of theft, assault, murder, adultery, and the like. So these are the some ritual practices happened during that time. An important law book is the Arthashastra of Kautilya, decipher, or this book is generally considered as the political life during modern period, or even we also include our political uh, or we include this book in our political system. The text is divided into 15 books, of which books 2nd and 3rd may be regarded as being of an earlier date and seem to have been the work of different hands. This text was put in its final form in the beginning of the Christian era, but its earliest portions reflect the state of society and economy in the age of the Mauryas. It provides rich material for the study of ancient Indian polity and economy. Of the non-religious text, the grammatical works are very important for historical reconstruction. They begin with the Ashtadhyi of Panini. Panini lived in the northwestern part of the subcontinent, present-day Kashmir. He is not mentioned in the Pali text, which principally represent Bihar and UP. Pani is dated to around 450 BC by V.S. Agarwal, who has written about Pani's India in both Hindi as well as English. In his view, no other text provides as much information about the Janpadas or territorial states of pre-Mauryan times as Pani's does. So Pani wrote much more about the ancient Indian past that was during the time period of Mahajanpada. So he is considered he lived in Kashmir during the period of 5th century BC. Patanjali's commentary on Panini dated 150 BC supplies valuable information about post-Mauryan times because Panini used very correct grammatical rule to write his text, that is Ashtadhyayi. We also have the works of Bhas, Sudraka, Kalidas and Bhat. Apart from their literary value, they mirror the conditions of the times to which the writers belonged. The works of Kalidas comprise Kavya, Kavyas and dramas. The most famous was Abhijana Sakuntalam. Besides being great creative compositions, they provide us with glimpses of the social and cultural life of the Guptas. So, Kalidas wrote many number of dramas and plays to show the Gupta period. In addition to Sanskrit sources, we have some of the earliest Tamil text in the corpus of Sangam literature. This literature was produced over a period of 3 to 4 centuries by poets who assembled in colleges patronized by chiefs and kings. Such colleges were called Sangam or such meeting, or we can say this Sangam literature was called because of the assembly of the scholar at one place that was happened during that time, and they can be classified into three parts. That three sangams were being established during this period. As first sangam was coronated in Pandya kingdom Madurai. Second was in Kapalapuram and third was also in Madurai. Okay, and the literature produced in these assemblies were known as Sangam literature. The compilation of the corpus is attributed to the first 4 Christian centuries, although they were rarely completed by the 6th century. The Sangam literature comprises about 30,000 lines of poetry arranged in eight anthologies called Ittu Togai. It means eight. Togai means anthologies or literature. The poems are collected in groups of hundreds such as Purana Nuru, the fourth, hundreds of the exterior. There are two main groups, Patin Ninkil Kanakku. Okay, Pat means 10. You should remember this. Pat means 10, it means 8. Okay, so you should remember to know about this text. What it mean to this? 18 lower collections. Pat Ninkil Kanakku. Pat means 10. Patti Patti means 18. Okay, and Pat, okay, means 10 songs. The former is generally assumed to be older than the latter and hence is considered to be of great historical importance. The Sangam text have several layers, but at present these cannot be established on the basis of style and content, but as shown later, they can be detected on the basis of stages in social evolution. Okay. Okay, 1 second. Okay, The Sangam texts are different from the Vedic text, particularly the Rig Veda. They do not constitute religious literature. The short and long poems were composed by numerous poets in praise of various heroes and heroines and are thus secular in nature. So you should remember UPSC generally asked about these types of questions related to women empowerment or various types of practices were being practiced during that time. They are not primitive songs but literature of high quality. Many poems mention a warrior or a chief or a king by name and describe in detail his military exploits, and you often heard about Agam or Akam or Puram. These are two such practices which are created during Sangam period. That is, Akam means the generally related to love, and Puram generally related to war. Okay, so these are two important terminology which you can use or which you should remember this. The gifts made by him to bards and warriors are celebrated. These poems may have been recited in the courts. They are compared. These are the poems, okay? Akam and Puram poems. They are compared with the heroic poetry of the Homeric age, for they represent the heroic age of warriors and battles. It is difficult to use these texts for historical purposes. Perhaps the proper names, titles, dynasties, territories, wars, and the like mentioned in the poems are partly real. Some of the Chera kings mentioned in the Sangam text also appear as donors in inscriptions of the 1st and 2nd centuries. The Sangam text refer to many settlements, including Kaveri Pattanam, whose flourishing existence has now been archaeologically corroborated. They also speak of the Yavanas coming in their own vessels, purchasing paper with gold, and supplying wine and women slaves to the natives. This trade is known not only from Latin and Greek writings but also from the archaeological record. The Sangam literature is a major source of our information for the social, economic, and political life of the people living in deltaic Tamil Nadu in the early Christian centuries. What it says about trade and commerce is confirmed by foreign accounts and archaeological finds. So these are important terminologies which are very important for UPSC prelims as well as mains. So if you don't do much or if you don't understand any text, please ask me in the comment box without any embarrassing feeling. Okay, without any embarrassment you can ask me anything related to the ancient as well as medieval period history. Foreign accounts. Indigenous literature can be supplemented by foreign accounts, and these foreign accounts will be discussed tomorrow. Okay, because time is very much going on, and our lecture is also going to very lengthy, so I will discuss foreign accounts tomorrow. Okay, because we have now large number of text right now for this chapter. Okay, so we cannot be able to uh, read all these texts today within 2 hours. Okay, so I will tell you these foreign accounts because these are very important for prelims point of view, and if you want to clear the prelims 2026, then you have to understand, you have to read these texts thoroughly, so that you will be understand properly how ancient history or how ancient period is creating much our social, political, economic as well as career points, and we will know about, and with the help of this ancient past we are generally correlate with our past to present as well as the future. So keep practicing much more number of questions related to prelims as well as mains along with PYQ, and be happy. Have a good day.